Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Shaquille, the world's worst YouTuber. And for those who are curious why I call myself the world's worst YouTuber, just take out the way that I don't know how to get my lines, and this is like the fifth take of the intro that I've made. Also, for further inquiries, check out the backdrop. High state, state of the art, up to date, nice, and that's my pantry. World's worst YouTuber. If you somehow managed to miss the thumbnail, this video is me reading off and answering the questions in the Patreon March AMA. And now I know that this is going up in April. I posted the AMA post in March. People asked the questions and I answered them because they were asked in March and I'm answering them in April. And that's how this is working, and nobody asked for clarification, but I am giving it anyway. Now real quick, before we get into it, since the fate of TikTok is in the balance, even though we were just given a 75-day extension, I don't want to have to deal with that shit again. That is the way that I've been able to get by and make ends meet for the longest time, and this is part of why I did start a Patreon, and this is one of the ways that I have been incentivizing people to consider supporting the Patreon. Either you are a free member or you are paying $10 a month. The difference is, if you are a free member, you are able to participate in text posts, community discussions, stuff like that. If you are a paid member, $10 a month, that gets you exclusive content. Mostly right now it's TikTok compilations because I've been wanting to back them up and give people a reason to subscribe to the Patreon. But also with that, you get to have access to uploaded YouTube content a week ahead before the YouTube premiere, if you will. This is just a stream of consciousness, I gotta admit, because I have been awake much earlier than I want to admit, and it is 9:35 a.m. and I have not had coffee. The fact that I am functioning this well, this long, is a fucking mystery to me. But let's go answer some questions. Sarah asked the question, what instrument do you play, and do you have any classical training? Let's get this out of the way right away. I do not have any formal or classical training on any instrument that I play. I am pretty much entirely self-taught, and when you listen to me play, it definitely shows. I mean, I've had people that have given me pointers here and there. I've learned from people who are much more talented than myself when I have been in jam session with them. Bands that I've been in the past, although they didn't really go anywhere, I still have been in bands in the past. I am pretty much self-taught and peer-reviewed only. Now to answer the question of what instrument do I play the electric guitar, a little bit of acoustic, but I'm not as well versed in that. But I am better at the bass than the acoustic, but not as good on bass as I am with the electric guitar. And I don't know if you want to consider it a instrument, but I would like to also include my voice, because in my mind there is this ensemble of band instruments in the rock and metal subgenres where you need at least the vocalist, the drummer, the guitarist, and the bassist. And I think I have potential on the drums. I've just never owned my own kit to figure out one way or the other. It's a blasty blast. Dahlia asked the question, what is your favorite Ghost song and why? Now, for those who are unaware, Ghost is one of my favorite bands. And for me personally, when a band becomes one of my favorite bands, it's because not only do I enjoy their music to the point in which I want to play it regularly and frequently, it's because I can't pick a single song to be a favorite. And this goes for any band that I would have ever at any point considered to be a favorite, including but not limited to Slipknot, Volbeat, stuff like that, or more recently, Sleep Token, Motionless in White, and Ghost. I forgot to mention Avenged Sevenfold and Atreyu. How dare I? Back to the point though, I don't have one singular favorite Ghost song, but I would say that some of my go-tos are Hunter's Moon, Ceres, Square Hammer, Mummy Dust. Mummy Dust is a good one. Doesn't get enough love, and I'm going to stick to that. Spillways, Call Me a Little Sunshine, Dance Macabre. There's a bunch of them. But I actually think Watcher in the Sky winds up being on my playlist more frequently than I would typically think that song to come up, just because it doesn't fit the usual style of being on my typical rotation. But I'm going to throw it in there because it's good and I listen to it a lot. Hope that answers the question. Enough. Well, enough. Moving on. Now, this next one comes from Colette, but it is a long one, and it is a DID-related question. Before I start asking it aloud or get into my answer, I do want to point out and stress, no two systems are the same. No two systems form the same way. And with that, I can only speak about my knowledge, my understanding, and my experience being the host of a system. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm not an expert. I know as much as I can, being somebody who wants to understand my disorder better and the way that I can explain it in an easy enough way for others to understand. But again, no two systems are the same. Some things that I say may be contradictory to what other systems experience and vice versa, because no two systems are the same. In your previous videos, you mentioned that you have DID. Please forgive me if I have that wrong. It's my understanding that this evolves from early childhood trauma. Of the system that you work with, which of your identities interacts the most with deities or with the spiritual? Have these identities ever told you how and why they created or emerged? And do you think that this type of dissociative disorder is something to do with human survival that we have yet to explore without stamping it as mental illness? Now, there is a lot going on here, so I was going to take it piece by piece. Also, I'm sorry, I know the camera was shaky, and I had a hard time keeping it steady because I'm just holding it while I'm reading, and I hope it was legible. Real quick, I'm going to do my best to try to explain how I understand the theory of structural dissociation, and that this is how clinically it is believed that systems form. When we are children, between the ages of 5 and 9, sometimes it'll say 4 and 11, depending on the source that it's cited, we're figuring out the world around us. And it's a little bit misleading when in typical conversation we say, as children, our personality state isn't fully formed. What is more accurate to say, if I understand correctly, is that we're still learning the world around us, and around these people and in these situations, these behaviors are safe. We're learning that we can act one way with this friend that we can't with mom. We are learning that we can act a certain way in school that we can't at home. And because of this, little mini personality states are formed, and the entire personality state is not yet fully formed, because those little personality states, based on the setting, have not yet become a cohesive whole. And when a child in this age range is experiencing repeated trauma, a consistent pattern of traumatic events, their mind will dissociate to get away from the traumatic thing that's happening. Now, it's not something that we do. It's something that our brain does for us because it is a trauma response. We are responding to the external threat, the external dangerous stimuli. So with that, we kind of forget. While those things are happening, we forget that it happened. Over time, in those dissociated states, those memories of the traumatic events taking place will be separated either into one of these other personality states, or will go on to be a part of a completely new personality state. And because this is going on, our brain will decide for us that if we are to remember these things, we won't be able to survive. It's dangerous for us to remember them. And for whatever reason, our brain, our minds put up an amnesia wall between us and those memories in order to keep us safe. The accidental side effect of these amnesia walls is that now entire people are forming behind them or within them in these pockets of personality state. So now as the child grows and progresses and learns the world around them even more, those amnesia walls are up, preventing that altered state of personality conscious to integrate into the whole of the child's consciousness as they become an adolescent and an adult. And this is how, because of amnesia walls, making us forget the bad thing, and those pockets of memory and personality state going on to be their own separate person, this is how altered states of personality consciousness form. And this is what we call alters. Now, there are a lot of people, myself included, that feel like alter, although it is accurate and proper, it feels a little clinical, or for whatever reason it makes us feel not quite right, so we will refer to our alters as headmates, because it's like a roommate or a flatmate, but they're living in our head, so headmate. And now there are a lot of things that were once believed about DID or other system-bearing disorders such as OSDD-1A or OSDD-1B, which stands for Other Specified Person... Scratch that. I'm not redoing this. Other Specified Dissociative Disorder -1A or Other Specified Dissociative Disorder -1B. Where was I? There are a lot of things that were once believed about these disorders that are no longer accurate now that the field of study has widened, broadened, and the specialists have come to learn more about the disorder. Initially, it was referred to as MPD or multiple personality disorder, and it was also believed to be genetic somehow. Until a doctor, I forget the name of the man, who went in and tried to debunk the idea of multiple personality altogether. Instead, what he came back with was a recategorization of MPD because it's not a personality disorder, and nor is it genetic. It is a dissociative disorder based in this early childhood trauma. And I forget if he was the one or if it was his contemporaries or people working on this project with him that came up with the theory of structural dissociation, because in spite of his best effort to try and say that it's hogwash and try to remove it altogether, instead our understanding was revolutionized and broadened. And the field of study and understanding on this topic is still broadening to this day, such as where previously it was believed, and some therapists even still believe this to be the case, that integration therapy is the way to go, and by being a coalesced unified whole is the mark of healing and progress. Now instead, from the pushback of multiple different systems, as well as a better understanding of the way systems form and function, we can now comfortably say that although integration therapy is a good idea for some systems, it might be better for other systems like myself and my system for functional plurality or cohesive plurality, where we can still exist as a system, but function and get by just fine in society and live seemingly normal lives. And now that I've gotten all of the clinical shit and all the disclaimers out of the way, I do want to say one last thing. I have no problem answering these questions in AMAs and stuff like that, but I am not going to turn my page into a DID page. Yes, I am one of many that make up the conglomerate Jekyll. Ethan is the face of Jekyll, but when it comes to content creation, there are at least 4 of us, myself included, that are a huge part of content creation on any of our platforms. And this is why Jekyll is more of a character. That way any of us can perform the part of Jekyll or make the content as Jekyll, because we are all Jekyll. Of the system that you work with, real quick, we are all the system. I am the system, Nina's the system, Dahlia's the system, etc., etc., etc. The way that we explain ourselves and our system is that we are the system of Thra, aka the Dark Crystal system, which, yes, is a reference to the Dark Crystals universe by Jim Henson. And the reason that we are the system of Thra is because we are Thra. Thra is the planet that the lore and the movie and the comics and the Netflix TV series take place on. We are Thra. We are the Dark Crystals. I don't work with a system. I am a part of a system. We are the system. I don't work with a system. I am a part of that system. Which of your identities interacts the most with deities or with the spiritual? All of us. It's just a matter of what we are focusing on. For example, I'm going to refer to the 4 main fronters, myself, Nina, Raven, and Dahlia. We all work with spirits. We all work with deities. We all do magic. It's just a matter of myself and Raven, for example. We work with and worship Hecate. Nina, although she calls herself either a magician or a sorceress more than a witch, She still interacts with divinity, particularly Akati or whoever else is in our space at that given time, but she's more solo and less deity-oriented, even though she still focuses on magic and deity interactions. Dahlia, I have a hard time saying that she would ever call herself a witch, maybe a magician. She does more of the spiritual energy work type of thing. And although she does do stuff like use runes and use herbs, and I'm not sure if it's accurate to call what she does witchcraft, even though it might look like it, she kind of really is got her own magical system going on. We're all spiritual, witchy, spooky bitches. It's just a matter of what we choose to focus on, one compared to the other. Have these identities ever told you how and why they created or emerged? Let me get into it. I feel often that some people kind of get this idea based on the way that it's presented in social media or in movies and television, that you are a person who is the host of your system, and then one day these random foreign entities are in your head and just bum rush you, or there's the tired trope of the evil altar coming in to either hurt people or ruin your life, and it's complicated. Let's just say that rare, if ever, is the occasion that it ever looks like that. Now, I will admit, it did kind of feel that way at first when I first was now no longer a part of a covert system, but an overt system, meaning that there was a wall between me and the rest of my system, but they were still there. They were always there, just separate from the front consciousness unless something happened and I dissociated and one of them were triggered to the front. So from the moment that wall, that amnesia wall came down, which I remember was the late evening of March 26, 2020. At first it did feel like that because all of a sudden these different personalities are there and I was very dissociated for many weeks. And as I got more familiar with them, I realized for me and my system, an exploration of them is also an exploration of myself, because we come from the same source. We come from the same mind. And although we personally don't enjoy likening the idea of our system as a fractured, broken psyche, because with this theory of structural dissociation, there never was a whole psyche to get broken. This is something that our brain did to cope with an incredibly trying time, series of trying times that our child brain didn't know how to deal with, so we developed as whole, completely separate, different people. But I am one of these completely separate, different people, even if there is an illusion granted that I am separate from them. And although we are completely whole, unique, different people with different tastes for food and music and style and preferences in media, preferences in magic, we have our own wants and desires and thoughts and opinions, hopes, dreams, aspirations. We are still a part of the same whole. So for the sake of rhetoric and trying to help others understand, when I'm asked the question, have these identities ever told you how and why they created or emerged, I also have to ask myself the question, why I formed and created. I'm not an original. In our system, there isn't an original. We aren't broken off of an original child, if that makes sense. I also was formed as an alter, the same way they were. It's not like they emerged separate from me. We all were formed from the same fabric, if you will. But to get right down to the point, have they ever told me how they emerged or were formed? Yeah. But if I were to go over all of it right now, we'd be here for a much longer time than I have to film currently. So I'm going to break it down real quick. One day, I was there. Suddenly, I was aware of myself as someone separate from the person who is living life. One day I am not that person. I'm in this person's head, but I am me and they are me, and I'm not them. I am me. And it was very confusing for myself at age 8 or 9, whenever it was. And then there's a girl. And then I realize, am I a girl? Don't I have a boy body? This is weird. And I think it's because of that first initial feeling that even though I identify as a female alter and a non-binary person in an A.M.A meat suit, I still am very comfortable dressing like a guy. I am still very comfortable lacquering myself in the atypical masculine attire. But make no mistake, I am a female alter. I just like dressing like this. Even on the inside, I dress like this. But there was another girl. I didn't know who the hell she was, but I knew that one day, all of a sudden, I was not that person, and then there was another person who was also not that person. And when it comes to DID conversations or OSDD conversations, there is often the conversation of alter roles, such as host, co-host, protector, persecutor, caretaker. The way some people talk about it, it almost seems as if when we form, we're slapped with this identification. It's like, haha, that's my job now. I'll have to go do my job. And that might be the case for some other systems, I'm not sure. But for me, it's not that I made a decision one day to become the protector. It's that one day I was like, no, this shit's gonna end, and I am going to move these hands, and we are going to throw them. And that's when I started fighting and fist fighting my abusers. And then because it happened in a dissociative state when bad things were happening, when I came back inside and was no longer fronting, the person who then began to front, who is the host, didn't know what the fuck happened. And I realized that I had a choice to make, because this person over here, this girl, sometimes wasn't there, but it was when bad things were happening. And I realized she was there in the front position when bad things were happening. And I am not going to go into detail. Here's your trigger warning now. But let's just say that that alter was first the sexual protector. And then I continued to be the protector. And I would have never called myself protector up until a certain point. But I knew if I didn't do something, nobody was going to. That particular type of bad stuff stopped happening. There were still other bad things, but that bad stuff stopped happening. And this person who was over here had a hard time dealing with it. And it's hard to really say that they split from one another, because it's more or less that this person here was also shoving down those memories as a way to cope with it. And now there was another one who now had some of the memories that this one had. So splitting away from one each other is kind of a misnomer, because I didn't like break in half like a piece of bread and now we're two people. It's that these memories were being pushed down as to where this person did feel safe, they no longer did feel safe, and in a way to process that, a whole new person came and sort of like from them, but also not from them. And now those two people are the headmates that we call Nina and Raven. Now, I could go on and on and on about how our system formed, but I was not always the host. I didn't become the host until 2016, and I didn't realize that a host switch happened until 4 years after the fact. And it took the better part of a year for me to have that amnesia wall come down in 2020 and then get familiar with my headmates to then realize, oh, ain't none of us original. There isn't original. That idea never existed. In fact, there was a shell alter who we often did not like. And for the longest time, we thought the former host was Dahlia. It's more accurate to say that she was her own person who was front stuck and lived in the shell, but she and the shell alter were kind of separate. And when that amnesia wall came down was when that shell alter started cracking and falling apart. And now the only thing that we can conclude is that that shell alter is the person who is rightly deemed our dead name, because there are some things that alter did, even though they're a shell alter and they're not the same as us as alters. That shell alter did a lot of things that none of us did. And it's probably best that they are gone. And I'm going to leave it at that. And that's why I've been a little bit nitpicky with some of the phrasing in this comment and series of questions. Not because I am offended, but because it feels like there's already a misunderstanding about systems. But the reason I want to answer it is because I feel like it is important to answer so systems, in the very least, this system, can be better understood. And I hope this helps, but I know there were more parts of the question. Do you think this is a type of dissociative disorder is something to do with human survival? Yes, absolutely. It is a survival mechanism. It is something that our brain does to keep us alive, because these traumatic situations led to the formation of a system instead of being one cohesive person to begin with. It is for survival, but do I think that there is some sort of evolutionary mechanism that would make this make sense? I've got no clue. This is where my understanding and knowledge is limited, and I have to remind people I am not a professional. And then, have to do with survival that we have yet to explore without stamping it as a mental illness. I'm going to leave that at this. It is a mental illness. It is a disorder, because it is a disordered mechanism. It is because it is a disorder that this is now a mental illness. It is that. It is all of those things. But I think instead of insisting that it's not a mental illness, I would ask us all to consider why we have a hard time considering things mental illness. There is a stigma that doesn't need to be there, where if we call it mental illness or mental unwellness or a disorder, people feel really icky about it. People feel really weird about it. I don't think that the problem is calling it mental illness. I think the problem is our relationship with mental illness and what it is. And now I'm going to move on to the next question. If you could visit anywhere or anyone in the continental United States, where would you go? What would you do when you got there? I have no idea. Unfortunately, traveling is not something that I really think about. It's not something that I really plan for, because I am in poverty, and I have been my entire life. And although I have been to some other states other than the Midwest, I've been to Colorado, I've been to Illinois, I've been to Wisconsin, I've been to Tennessee, I've been to Kentucky, I've been to Louisiana, I've been to a few different places. But it's not something that I have ever planned, because traveling isn't something that I could ever really count on in my life. And because of the financial situation I am currently in, I don't think about traveling. So I don't really think about it. So I don't know where I would go. And I think that's about the best I got. Oh, I've also been to Florida. Forgot to mention Florida. Xanity System asks, in what ways, if any, has working on the Egoverse provided therapeutic or healing moments for individuals of the system or the system as a collective? Don't feel pressured to share anything too personal. For those who are unaware, we have an Egoverse on this channel where myself and my system dress up as different characters to take on different subjects. For example, in the Of Chaos Magic and Egregores, one character would take on a topic that was pertinent to the overarching subject, which is egregores and chaos magic. Then it would switch to, or very ASDF movie style, and then move to the next thing. And now it's another character who is taking on another topic that is a part of the larger topic at hand. There are also some others that are more of a variety show oriented, such as the Halloween Hangover 1, 2, or 3, or the Holiday Hangover 1 or 2. And there's also a couple of one-off videos, Just a Taste, and I forget what I call it, was it of the past and present future, something like that, where it is just specifically Egoverse oriented, and there is world building, story building, and it's building towards something. But the thing is, there are multiple different characters that have their own personalities that push the plot forward. And before making this video, we did kind of go over these questions together to make sure we knew what we wanted to say. And I think it's pretty unanimous that for any of us, the Egoverse isn't therapeutic. It's an escape. It's a way that we can put on a show and entertain our audience. We are the magicians putting on a performance for an audience. We are the ones that are writing our own story. And I don't think any part of it is therapeutic as much as it is cathartic. There are some moments of catharsis, such as when the Darren character is not only confronting the audience, but is also confronting the other characters by mocking them near the end of the Egoverse production known as of Chaos Magic and Egregores. Because, we don't have time to get into it. It was cathartic to just look at the mirror and go, fuck you, and especially fuck you. I'm smarter than you. You don't know what you're talking about. Quit being a little bitch. And I think with any of us, any of the parts that we play, they are caricatures of ourselves. For me, I play the part of Detective Taylor, a washed-up, MUFON investigator-looking motherfucker loosely based on John Constantine. Instead of going out and taking on the DC universe, Detective Taylor takes on minor things. He had a TV show and was sick of it. That's me being fed up with TikTok. He wants to strongly get back to his roots and quit being this larger-than-life persona and just find himself again. It's me. And now he's also taking on topics of egregores and Hecate and all these other different things to break away from what he was doing with his TV show. It's me! And the one who has played the part of Darren, the character, Darren T. Smith, for the longest time, is our current system protector, Zach. And I feel like that's very fitting because Darren was a character that we kind of made together when we were kids. I came up with the story, Dahlia drew the art, but really Zach fit the personality. Just this cold, jaded person who doesn't want to let the world walk all over him, but at the same time, he wants to throw hands and punch every stupid motherfucker in the face. It's Zach. And just like the Darren character was shelved for a long time because he was one of the first characters that was brought to the Egoverse and was not returned for a long time, Zach too was one of the first individuals who was a part of our system, and then not because he wanted it or because we made him sit on the sidelines, but for other reasons, he was kind of just in the background, not really making an appearance. He too felt like he was being shelved, and he was watching as all of this shit was going down on TikTok, and is just frustrated with the world in general. So for him, putting on that Darren mask, I'm sure is cathartic more than it is therapeutic. And then for one last example, with the Egoverse, Raven plays the part of Chaz Flasberry. Raven is our system gatekeeper, and what that means is she can help us integrate memories if she knows how. She can help us to suppress memories because that's kind of what she did from the get-go. She can also help to calm us down and ground us, as well as facilitate switches that are being difficult to deal with and navigate. She's basically the telephone operator, plugging one thing into the next and linking one thing to the other. She is the system's nerve center. Chaz Splasberry is a neurotic, nigh sociopathic game show host who is in control of the entire Egoverse. Rather, he's not in control of the Egoverse, he is in control of what you are witnessing. When Chaz Flasberry takes this little remote and clicks it, it goes psh, and moves to the next thing. He is in control of what people see. He is the mastermind behind everything that is shown in the Egoverse. And the characters of Chaz Flasberry and Zach are morally opposed to one another, even though they're both a little unhinged. It's Raven and Zach in many ways. But comparing Chaz Flasberry to Raven, although Raven is not nearly as sadistic as Chaz Flasberry, there is still this idea that what you see here is because of Raven. She is the one that is in control of the switches, which is like Chaz Flasberry being in control of what you're seeing on screen. She knows what's going on, is more aware of what's going on than any of us are in our system, because she's aware of it all, like Chaz Flasberry, who is more aware of what's going on in this Egoverse than anybody else, including Darren is. Because Darren is the only character that is aware he is a character, and he knows that he has power with that to jump basically from metaphorical comic panel to the next metaphorical comic panel, while nobody else realizes that they're in a comic book. And I'm sure that in many ways, I don't know if it's therapeutic, but it is cathartic, where Raven gets to put on the Guy Fawkes mask, dazzle the audience, and while at the same time pretending for 5 minutes, I am in control and you are in my show. Welcome. And if you don't like what I'm doing and you don't like the show, you can see yourself out. Got it? Good, because fuck you anyway. I'm sure that's pretty cathartic. Kizu asks, what's one thing you wish you could tell your younger self? This is to all of you if y'all want to answer separately. Also, if it's too deep, just feel free to ignore. There are plenty of things that we could tell our younger selves. Don't listen to that deity. Don't listen to that person. Don't go walking down the road that cold, fateful night. But the problem with that is, we like pop culture a lot. We also like sci-fi and fantasy a lot. And there is often a trope of the time-traveling individual who comes back with a foreboding warning to their younger selves. And either this fucks up the entire timeline, creates multiple timelines, there's something. And we like it so much that it is something that we implemented in the Egoverse. Ultimately, we have a contingency plan that we have all agreed on. If we see our future self, punch them in the fucking face. So if there is anything that we could tell our past younger selves, it wouldn't have happened. And that's that. Coming in with the final question, Nikki asks, if you could pick the brain of any famous person, alive or dead, who would it be and what would your first question be? Ever since middle school, my answer has been Aleister Crowley. And I think it's interesting that even before I was a type of practitioner that took myself seriously or knew how to cast any spells, Aleister Crowley is this character who's just been around regardless. And although I believed in magic, I also was raised in a Satanic Panic era Christian household and was given a documentary presented by a bunch of Christian conspiracy nuts who were claiming that rock and roll is the devil's music. Here is the scripture to back it up. Here are the things that these rock and roll artists say, do, or claim. And look, Aleister Crowley has something to do with it, all of it. Did you know that Aleister Crowley actually had a picture on the front of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club by the Beatles? Take a look at that cover. His face is in there. Also, do we need to talk about Ozzy Osbourne again? Everybody knows how evil and satanic Ozzy Osbourne is. And he, this bat head biting evil motherfucker, Ozzy Osbourne, is singing about Mr. Crowley. Truly evil. Sick shit. So I have been aware of Aleister Crowley for a large majority of my life, and I always found the man fascinating. Not because I like him. In fact, I think this is going to be an ill-received and, in the very least, unpopular take. Aleister Crowley was a horrible motherfucker. Total piece of shit. Like, I don't get when people sort of like venerate Aleister Crowley, but at the same time, I do find him endlessly fascinating. Not because I like him, but because this is the person that if I could pick any famous person's brain, alive or dead, it would be him. And my first question would be, what the fuck are you doing? And I also think that although we should recognize Aleister Crowley as the horrendous person that he was, like, talks about cultural appropriation aside, talks about the way that he fucked up the understanding of certain things in magical spaces that influenced generations to come. Recognize those things. But he hurt and broke everybody he came into contact with. I don't know if it's that there was a genuine lack of care or concern for other people's well-being, but he literally got somebody dead because he made this man drink the blood of a cat. And from that point, the man got sick and died. Also, his direct student, understudy, whatever the fuck you want to call him, I forget his name off the top of my head, is Newberg, his assistant, familiar, boy toy, whatever. He broke this man so hard that when he left his little orbit, when the man left Crowley's orbit, he got distance from him, got married, started living a moderately normal life, and when Crowley came back, his wife answered the door with a gun and said, "If you come back here, I will shoot you dead." What the fuck? Aleister Crowley, aside from what he did to magic, is just a terrible, terrible person. But aside from that, I personally think that we need characters like that in magical history. I think that we need bad guys in magic to be like an archetype of, you see this? Don't be like this. Don't ever do what this man did. And the thing that sucks, and the thing that's really weird about it, is I have read some of his work. I've read the Book of Lies, I've read Book 4, and I've thumbed through the nigh incomprehensible scrawling that is the Book of the Law. And I hate to admit there are some things that I'm like, you know what, I get it. I'm starting to vibe with what he's saying. Like, he's pointing to something that I also kind of understand and agree with. The methodology in which he wants to get there, especially when he's musing and waxing poetic about the will and what it means to do as thou wilt and shit like that. When he's talking about will and how the will changes, and it is ultimately a person's goal to become in line with their own personal will, and once they get there, they can be this nice, unstoppable force. I vibe with that, and that scares me. But again, I think that in magic and just in life in general, we need these fucking dastardly bastards in magic, in other spaces, to be like, don't be like this person. And I'm repeating myself, but the reason is, this man is so well documented. This man was so full of himself that he made sure that everybody knew what was going on with him at all times. Whether it's through diaries, whether it's through writings, whether it's through the stories of other people, this man beefed with Oscar Wilde because he was jealous of his poetry. This man broke in to the, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn because he was a part of the Golden Dawn. And you want to know who else was? W.B. Yeats, William Butler Yeats, was also a part of the Golden Dawn at the same time. So after Crowley gets locked out, after he breaks back in and walks up the stairs, there's Yeats just standing there and kicks him back down the stairs. And this was in the middle of a full-out breakdown of the order. People were fighting left and right. A literal witch war is taking place. You know the shit that we see on TikTok? You know the witches of witch talk who are just petty and fucking insufferable. That was these people. And Aleister Crowley was at the top of them. Holy fucking shit. Do you realize how much people don't change? And that as much as we want to criticize and ridicule witch talk, look at the Crowley era of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. It's the same shit, just a different time period. And this is one of the reasons we need motherfuckers like Aleister Crowley, so we can look back at the not too distant past and go, well, I guess there's just jackasses wherever you go. And also it reminds us that sometimes things change, but there are some things that absolutely don't, because people haven't changed much. Aleister Crowley as an archetype, one of the last well-renowned, ill-received, evil fucking dark magician sorcerers that literally got the chance to live the life of being that evil son of a bitch. And it was just around 100 years ago. He's a fucking wizard of the likes of Merlin, who lives in this existence of myth and fable and fairy tales and all these stories that are told about him. And he is an endlessly fascinating person, even if he is objectively a downright fucked up evil dude. And I think we need people like that. Not to look up to them, but to be an example of don't. And that's where I'm going to tie that off. And that will conclude this month's Patreon AMA. I want to give a special thank you and shout out to the paid patrons of the month of March. That includes Danielle, Squirrel, Melissa, Rachel, Kevin, Tai Vu, Shy, Jai, XAI, Nikki, AJ, Lisa, April, Matthias, Kizu, Colette, Estrella, Sarah, and Shannon. Thank you all so much. Thanks to you, my March was a little bit easier to navigate. Thanks to you, my life was able to continue on in a way easier than it has been in months previous. And I want to thank you all for being here and asking awesome questions and giving me an excuse to get back to YouTube once again. And remember, this is going to be up 1 week before it is available on YouTube, only to the paid patrons, as a thank you for giving me money. If you're still here, I want to thank you for listening. As always, take care and much love.